Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Q&As. I had to record this Thursday early evening because of scheduling issues, so I'm sure there's going to be a question or two that probably come in after I record, but before it goes live Friday morning. So I just want to remind everybody that if I ever miss a question, it's never intentional. It's either a situation like this, or sometimes I just mess up and accidentally delete a file in post or something like that. So just wanted to remind everybody, any question at all you have, just post in the latest Q&A post, wherever it is that you support. And then if I miss it, please re-ask, or if it's something important, just direct message me through the apps or anything like that. But anyway, let's jump right in. First, over on the YouTube support post, Retron asked if I could recommend a capture card for HDMI output. They plan on getting the PS1 digital and the DC digital and would like to capture that digital signal. They're also looking for a GBA consolizer and an EverDrive GBA. That's a good question. It really depends how far you want to go with this stuff. If you just want to capture all of that in either 480p or 720p, depending on which console it is, and you're on not really have a big budget, I guess, you could try one of those $20 capture cards that Epos Vox found. If you're just doing like streams with friends and nothing super serious, I mean, it drops frames all the time, but you get the picture on there and it's $20, so you can't really complain about that. You could also try those $60 or $70 ones that Voltar found. However, it seems like our suspicions were correct in that very often you'll see that same blue box that has different guts in it. So get it from a place that you could return it. You would know right away. I mean, if you plug in your consoles and it doesn't work right, it doesn't sync up or anything like that, then it's not going to work for you. After that, though, I mean, after you have those two options, like the $20 new one and the $80 new one, a lot of newer cards are starting to get really expensive, but can handle all of this stuff pretty well. And to be honest, I'm not sure what I would recommend for more of a mid-range thing. I know that AverMedia, the Live Gamer, I think it's called, the internal PCIe-based one, a lot of people have spoken very highly of that, but that's $300. I've had so much trouble with Elgato products, so I don't know if I would be able to recommend that. Some people have no problems at all. Some people only have issues in certain modes. So I don't know if it's just one specific model, but I've tested some of the same models other people have and got totally different results. So it's very inconsistent. So I guess I'd probably stay away from those. And as I learned in that live stream a couple of weeks ago, the Cam Link is great for this. That's what I'm using it for. But the Cam Link is very weird with video games, especially retro stuff. So, if you have room for an internal one, those DataPath Vision cards are always amazing. Get it used, definitely. Don't spend $1,000 on it or more. But that's what I've had the most luck with overall. It's not HDMI, it's DVI, so the best thing to do is to pick up a really cheap audio extractor, both because you would need to get the audio elsewhere, even just through your regular 3.5 millimeter jack on your computer, and because it does a really good job. I'm going to try to make this short. If you go directly into the data path with HDMI, sometimes you get green speckles, and because this little box is right in front of it, it seems to help that a lot. I'm trying to refrain from going on to an hour lecture about my findings and everything else I've just been experimenting in, so I'm not intentionally trying to be vague. I'm just trying to not go off on a tangent or anything like that. So I'm definitely a giant fan of the data paths. I also really liked the Epiphan DVI to USB 3.0. Once again, used, not new. Knew they were ridiculously expensive. Those can do 1080p, but they could do uncompressed up to 720p, so full color range, everything else. So they're really great cards for absolutely everything, and they're USB based. As far as more modern stuff goes, I would probably check like Epos Vox's channel and maybe see if anybody here is willing to chime in and let everybody know what they're using to capture. But I know there's a bunch of really fairly priced low-end stuff that most people might be happy with, and there's some really awesome high-end stuff that's been working great. I don't know about the mid-range stuff. I haven't had the best luck with them, and I'm not even sure what's available these days. So hopefully I could at least point you in the right direction, and if you're really looking for a mid-range option, maybe somebody could chime in. Over on Patreon, I'll start with the newest one first, because why not? Jason Guffey says, okay, I'm finally doing it. I'm finally taking the PVM pill. Just got to find one first. My question is, what should I be looking for and where should I be looking? Is it just the typical sites like eBay, Craigslist, and Facebook Marketplace? Are there any useful keywords I should be looking for, such as security monitor or studio monitor? I have no idea what PVMs were actually intended for in their prime. Obviously, I'm looking for some RGB input capabilities, but that's pretty much all I know. Someone in my area is selling a PVM 1340 for $300, but a quick Google search made me think twice about it. I'm very ignorant on these, so feel free to impart your wisdom. So prices on these are going to be all over the place depending on where you are. eBay is like the worst place to look because everybody on eBay thinks they're sitting on a gold mine for something that doesn't even work. Now, I'm saying that whereas, less than a year ago, I just had another wonderful experience on eBay. I got the best packed CRT I've ever had shipped to me. It was an awesome seller, very honest person. So, I mean, there are still fair deals, but it's probably the worst place to look unless you accidentally stumble on something, because people on eBay will just search for the model number of the one they have, see some complete idiot listing it for $4,000, and they'll list theirs for $4,000, and then they'll both sit up there for months and months and months, and while no one's dumb enough to pay it, it drives the price of all the other ones up, and it's just very frustrating. So I would check with Craigslist. I would check with any like medical supply depot style places in your area. And PVM is professional video monitor. And which one to look for? Anyone that works, honestly. The difference between different model PVMs and even really consumer grade TVs come down to calibration, and how much detail is on the screen. But the bottom line is a very beat up, worn out, 1,000-line CRT is going to look worse than a very new, barely used consumer-grade TV with 450 lines. So it's easy to obsess about the details, and I would just forget about all of them. I would just look for a PVM, find one for, that $300 price isn't cheap, but it's not unfair. So there you go. Start yourself with a little 13-inch, and if you like it and you get the bug like I did, you're going to start realizing which ones you like better, why, which ones your eyes prefer. There's no right or wrong answer either for that. Or you could just buy that one and go, oh, that's good enough. Or another thing is you could just try to find any consumer grade TV with either S-video or component video inputs and give that thing a try. I mean, it's a possibility that you're going to find one of those and just have all the experience that you need right out of that without going any further. So, it's probably not the answer you were looking for. You were probably looking for get this model between this price range from this place, but it's just not that easy. And it looks like you had a second question on using audio with Extron crosspoints. So you keep hearing the term Phoenix terminal, but can't really tell if there are adapters that they would need to buy or rig up your own wires to connect with screws. You feel like there's a simple explanation that's just eluding you. Yeah, they are Phoenix connectors, but a bunch of different places sells them already rigged up with RCA jacks in there. So if you get an Extron Crosspoint, you could either make some of them. I think DB Electronics posted an open source file if you want to hand solder your own. And it's not wires, it's like a PCB with connectors, so it'll look pro. Or I believe Retro Gaming Cables and a couple other places just sell them pre-made for you already. So that might be the easiest thing for you if you're looking to just populate a crosspoint with RCA audio jacks. But that's pretty much everything, I guess. And thanks for the kind words. Ishan said they're having an issue with Mr.'s Amiga Core. I've actually never used that core, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be any help, but let's keep going and cross my fingers. Having trouble with the Amiga Core on a PVM 14L2. The PVM works great with every other core, but the Mini-Mig core, specifically the video signal, is ultra-wide, 1500 by 280. And it even goes to 3000 in Mega AGS software and Workbench. The PVM does display the image, but for PAL games, there's a very distracting flicker, and for NTSC games, the flicker is gone, but the entire image on the PVM moves in a slow, wavy motion. It also happens on other PVMs. I think the ultra-wide resolution is causing an issue because every other core just works just fine. So that's interesting. That could just be the super resolution settings for certain cores for people that want to do things like use an HDMI to component video converter and not even use an I/O board, just get analog output that way. I would go directly to the Mr. Forums for that, though. It could just be a bug in that one core. It could be a ton of different things. So rather than chase ghosts, I think I would just go right to the Mr. Forum and kind of see what they have to say. Marco Vizzini wants to know what my go-to handheld device for multi-console emulation is. They're still rocking the PSP Go, and I'm wondering if I've tried any of the many handhelds I see on AliExpress, like the Retroid Pocket. I actually don't really play handhelds at all. I play the Game Boy ones via the GBA Consolizer whenever I feel like playing those games. For Game Gear, I usually either play the GG to SMS hacks, or on occasion I'll plug in those original consoles just for that blast of nostalgia, but I really just prefer to sit on a couch and play on a big screen. And whenever I do play a game, because I'm stuck somewhere on a subway, it's usually like Solitaire or Moncala on my iPhone, just because I already have it in my pocket. But I really don't know what I would recommend over the PSP Go, because from everything I've heard about it, it works very good as an emulation machine, and it's a pretty cool console. So you kind of have everything you need right there. A lot of people are still doing cell phone emulation, and I don't know if I ever showed it, but hold on, let me see if I still have it here. Yeah, I do. I have one of these controllers that you basically just clip your cell phone into. And as long as it's compatible, which pretty much all Android phones are, you're able to just turn it into like an actual, see if you can see that, into an actual game console. And there's a bunch of lag on it, but when I was playing on handhelds at all, I found it to be tolerable enough where I was able to have some fun and enjoy a couple rounds of something while I waited. But I don't really like the whole idea of the AliExpress Retroids, and I especially don't like how they market them, because they market those things as if you could take it home and just like start playing N64 games, and they don't tell you that, like, hey, you need to then download ROMs, load them up, reorganize them, sometimes mess with the settings. So I don't really have much love for those in general. I would rather, if you're going to carry something around, I would rather carry something that has a dual use, like a cell phone or a Switch or a PSP Go. But that is just my opinion. I certainly wouldn't look down upon anybody for using those. You asked, so I told my opinion, and I guess I'm not really able to recommend much of anything for you then. Patrick Working wants to know if I had any info or have done any testing on the JTech Digital JTD0801 Switch. No, but it looks kind of cool. It's a multifunctional HDMI converter with 8 inputs to 1 HDMI output. That's pretty neat. So I guess it looks like component video, composite video, and VGA to HDMI. It doesn't, I'm not sure if it says it does any scaling. It says it supports up to 1080p 3D, but it doesn't say scaling. So if this is just an analog to digital converter, then this would probably be a really cool thing. Not sure if it's going to be compatible with 240p over composite video, so keep that in mind. But if you were to somehow need an HDMI switch, 2 component video inputs, and a VGA input to be converted, then it might be a good buy, especially for $130. So if you test it, or if you buy it, maybe test it, check it out with a time sleuth and see if any of the inputs add lag or anything like that. But that seems like a pretty neat converter / switch all at the same time. That was a pretty cool find, but no way to tell unless you try it. Alex R says they have an FX Pack Pro and think their Super Nintendo needs to be recapped because it's got flickering going on when they play on their PVM. They say it's definitely the hardware. I'm not sure how you would have tested then. And the only thing you could think of is get another power supply. So the first thing I would do is get another power supply, and I don't think you can go wrong with those triads. If you're in the US, just pick it up from Castlemania. Just find the link from the post I did the other day. And even if it turns out it's not the power supply, that one that you bought from Castlemania, you could eventually just buy another cheap pigtail and use it with a different console. So it's a good investment because now it's your backup. You could use it for multiple things. But I would start with that first and go from there. I don't know if caps would be the problem. So another thing I would try, you said specifically you just got an FX Pack Pro, so try an original game and see if it follows that. If it follows the FX Pack, it could be that it's drawing a bit too much power because the power supply is old or something. But I would start with a power supply and an original cartridge to see where that's at, and then go from there. And then after that, maybe it could be the voltage regulator, it could be the capacitors. But if possible too, try the same game on the FX pack that you have the same original game as well, just to see if it glitches out there. But I think that's probably the best places to start. John Viley asked, with the Tim Worthington Atari 2600 board, is there a particular reason why you can't do audio over the 8-pin DIN? Not at all. If you're doing RGB and going to the DIN, does it have to be separated as well? No. So Tim just doesn't like to. And I understand his reasoning for it. I understand, for years, we only had access to pretty garbage cables. And then with the major manufacturers coming out and really putting a focus on quality and all that stuff, we don't have that problem anymore. So when Tim first started doing a lot of these mods, like, you couldn't have good video and audio through the same cable because you'd pick up some cheap RGB cable from AliExpress and, nothing would be shielded and the audio would buzz. But as long as you get a decent cable, I would follow the XRGB Minis 8-pin DIN pinout just to make sure that it's consistent. It's not an official standard, but everybody who uses an 8-pin mini DIN uses that, and it should be very easy to take care of it that way. Even if you bought the kit and it didn't come with enough pads to tap audio as well, there's a few open source boards where you could I think they're on OSH Park and as well as other places, where you could drop the board right over the back pins on the 8-pin mini DIN, and it breaks out the connectors to make it very easy to solder to. You could just solder directly to the pins, but that's kind of a pain. But no, I mean, that's how I definitely plan on doing a lot of them. That's how I have done a bunch of mods with Tim's stuff. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Just get a decent cable. Go to Retro Access, Retro Gaming Cables, and pick up the 8-pin mini DIN. I think Insurrection was even talking about making them, but I don't know if they have yet. But no, it's a perfectly good solution. Kelv SYC said that with all the focus being on the Triad PSUs and specifically 9-volt power supplies, one must wonder if you could power retro consoles using an 18-watt 9-volt 3-amp USB-C power supply and an appropriate USB-C to barrel jack connector. Has there been any effort to see if this can be done, given the widespread availability of 18-watt USB-C power supplies? Theoretically, it should be fine. You would just have to go through the exact same tests that people have gone through on the Triads, which is the reason why we're talking about them. There's probably 10 other brands out there at least that perform equal to the Triads, but that's the one we found. They're readily available everywhere now, even right from Castlemania, and they're very fairly priced. So if somebody wants to do all of the research that the team did on the Triads, yeah, absolutely. Try to nail down a USB-C power supply and maybe even make USB-C to console power pigtails. I think that would be amazing, but you would just then have to do the same research. So yes, I guess, I mean, the short answer to your question is, I don't think anybody's done it, but it's totally possible. I wouldn't want to go through that unless I had to start hunting down another power supply. But if you're into that stuff and you have the time and the tools to test, absolutely go for it. Lopo was following up from last week's question about trying to get the audio louder using the Scart Cleaner, aka Scart to DVI. They said they got a new aux cord and the recording end doesn't have any issues anymore. The old one must have been busted, but now they've run into a different issue. The display is still quiet, at least quieter than if I run a single cable through. I haven't removed the resistors on the Scart to DVI, so do you think that'll fix it? I talked to the people that worked on that board with me, and I found a couple of different solutions for it. I'm pretty sure you could just remove the two capacitors, like I said last week. There's another note I had left myself to replace R7 and R8 with 0 ohm resistors, remove them and then jump it. But I have not had any time to test it yet, so I'm really sorry about that. If you still need this question answered, please let me know, and I promise you I will have it by next week's Q&A. If not, I still will follow up at some point, and I'll just update the Scart Cleaner page. I just got an old new PC that I've been rebuilding for capture, and I just kept saying, okay, when I'm ready to test that, that's when I'll test the board as well, because I'm going to need one anyway, and I haven't even gotten to that part yet, so my apologies. Matt Richtenberg said all of the suggested sources for quality SCART cables are either back-ordered, require you to make an order on a specific date, or are just plain non-responsive. I'm watching eBay for used cables from the manufacturers. Any other ideas? I badly need a PS2 RGB cable for my setup with the GunCon adapter, but I could tell the difference when using poor quality cables. So I feel your pain, but I think everything that's been going on in the world has had a severe impact on all businesses, not just from keeping up with stock, but even ordering supplies. And that was a ripple that's going to last a lot longer. Like, even hypothetically speaking, if everything went back to normal, like it never happened tomorrow, it would still take months to continue catching up in, suppliers to get stock and ship things out, custom builders like these cable makers to get their stock back up. So I think it's the time we're living in now, and it sucks, but the only thing you could do, if you tried all the links on RetroRGB and you're still not you're still not finding what you need, you could try knowing that it's going to be junk, you could try getting a junk one off of AliExpress. Check out the components that are in it and make sure the correct ones are. So if it's something that requires caps and resistors, you could check that. I did a video on that a few years ago, and you could just use that temporarily. You're saying you could tell the difference when using poor cables. Most people actually probably could. Whether they know what they're looking at, they would be able to tell, like, why is the audio humming? Why is there a weird pattern over the screen? So I totally feel your pain on that. I think you have to try to find yourself whatever solution works for now, and then just kind of get another solution in the future. One good thing you could do, I think the HD Retrovision PlayStation 2/PlayStation 3 cables are still in stock on Amazon. And if that's the case, now you have yourself a solution that's perfectly awesome. I don't think you'll have access to GunCon with that, but now you have a really high quality PS2 solution. And then, eventually when the other SCART cables come back in stock, you could have both. But, if you have any chance of ever using a PS3 on an analog display, you're going to want those cables anyway. So that's also kind of a good backup. Or of course you could try to find cheap S-video and composite cables and use that temporarily. But there's no easy answer to the issue. I'm sorry about that. Before I go, I just saw a few other posts from people that didn't really seem to require a response. They just were kind of following up on stuff from the previous week and confirming, yes, I got it right, no, I screwed it up, whatever else. So I just want to let you know I'm not ignoring you or anything. There was nothing really to address, and just wanted to give you all a shout out anyway. But anyway, that's it for this week. As always, thank you so much for everybody that participates in these. I always have a lot of fun doing them. And of course, and especially thanks to all of the supporters, because without your help, none of this stuff would be possible. So thank you all very much, and I'll see you next week.